to ChannelPro Weekly, episode 103. My name is Matt Whitlock, technology editor, online director, and your host of this fine program here now live in video format on YouTube. And I'm hearing myself in my thing there because I had the stream going up. So also joining me this week and most weeks is the man who takes everything a little bit too seriously in the news and is always running around. We call him Captain Serious, executive editor Rich Freeman.
The news is serious stuff, man. I'm sorry.
It is serious business, unless you're on Twitter, and then it's not serious business. Then it's just usually a lot of funny memes and pictures, which we got to get into the meme business, Rich.
You're right, actually. That is where the money is these days.
The money is in memes. Hey, and Rich, hey, we're not alone. We have a guest host this week, president of TeraCloud Inc. Please welcome Eric Long.
Yay.
Yay! You can tell he's so excited to be here. In his you said you're in an RV?
I am in an RV in Florida at the moment, heading back to Dallas on Sunday.
Oh, that's awesome. So we're out just camping, taking a road trip?
I'm just doing something different while I can.
Now, TeraCloud is based both out of Dallas and I forget where in Florida, but I mean, you have offices in both places, right?
We do. The Dallas, Tampa Bay, and Tulsa now.
Oh, okay.
Don't ask me why Tulsa. I like that song, Living on Tulsa Time, and it just seemed like an appropriate place to go.
It's as good a business logic as any, I suppose. So TeraCloud, so I mean, tell us a little bit about your background, just in the industry and also when TeraCloud specifically came to be, because you were, in my experience, early to the cloud and getting serious about the cloud. I'm sort of curious when you made that pivot.
Wow, that's a long story because I think we've pivoted a number of times over the years. So I go back about 30 years, ran a number of different companies. We were one of the first DSL providers in the Tampa Bay area. Then we expanded into broadband wireless. We worked back in the ACPAC Plus days doing some ERP systems, things like that. So the evolution into managed services really didn't happen until about 2001. We were one of Autotask's first customers, or early customers anyways. And kind of we're back, if you remember back in the day, the late 90s, ASP was the hot word. Nobody knew anything about cloud. So application service provider was the deal of the day. And it essentially is what the cloud has morphed to today. So we were hosting applications way back when. And then drawing up and creating VPNs between branch offices and sharing really, really slow applications over slow data links, which obviously we've come a long way since then.
And but that was part of a bigger business that included other IT services. I mean, when did you decide to put cloud in the brand and just really kind of make that your bread and butter?
When the media started hyping it. Got a lot of attention, so why not ride that bandwagon? We're still doing on-site support. We still sell a lot of hardware, but cloud is our dominant focus, and that's true across the spread of services that we offer, not just managed services and managed security, but all the way to business applications, ERP and CRM.
Yeah, I was just going to ask. I mean, I'm sure you do the obvious cloud stuff like Office 365, and you mentioned some others. But so I mean, talk about some of the cloud services that you offer, especially the ones that maybe a lot of people listening or watching aren't doing yet.
Yeah, that always floors me when they're not doing it or when they haven't made the move to Office 365 or they're dabbling and thinking about getting into managed services, for whatever reason, because you really need to be quick on your feet these days, more so than ever in the industry. We're trying not to become a commodity. It's hard with companies like Microsoft, commoditizing their product, in front of us. So we've essentially just blended services and support. We do just sell Office 365, but our ideal target client, we never lead with just Office 365. We've been backup in there, cloud-based cloud services backup. We embed security services, encryption, and then we try to talk a lot about business process automation, workflow automation, using that stack in 365.
And I mean, does the business process optimization piece of the business overlap with CRM and ERP too?
It can, if the customer's a candidate for CRM. You know, everybody's got an accounting system. Whether or not they need a CRM is questionable, but yeah, absolutely, all those applications would fit together. But you can get a prospect's ear if you start talking about automating certain things that they're doing manually today, and you're going to have to use that to upsell and offsell into other services, other solutions. But it's a good way to get their attention.
On the ERP CRM side of things, are you 100% Microsoft on that, or are you working with some of the born in the cloud guys, the NetSuites and Salesforces?
We kind of hitched our wagon to Microsoft, and so that's all that we're offering today. We don't have the manpower to sell across multiple platforms. I know that those competitors are pretty darn good. I think Microsoft 365 Dynamics 365 is a little behind, but I think they're catching up quickly because they realize that. And I think the finished product, will never be finished at this point because they keep releasing, new revs and new updates all the time. But I think their product in the, span of 3 more years is going to overtake a lot of those that are, cloud-based now.
It is interesting. That is always the market advantage or edge that Microsoft has, is they've got this enormous ready-made channel. There are all these people out there who have been partnering with Microsoft for a long time. They know the rest of the Microsoft, portfolio technology story, and so they're predisposed. If I'm going to do CRM, it would be a lot easier to just do it with Microsoft the way I'm doing everything else. And so even if the technology is a little behind, even if it's not quite as good, they've just got this enormous kind of built-in advantage.
Yeah, no doubt. And especially, with these applications, these line of business applications, seamlessly sliding into things like Teams and, over to SharePoint, and then Power BI, I think, is a game changer.
That's interesting. So what kinds of things are you doing with Power BI these days?
Data visualization, dashboards, not just the executive dashboards, but KPI dashboards for the people on the feet on the street, with their feet in the street, that are trying to make their quotas and their minimums, and so we've got a very interesting project going with that right now, that they're visually representing it to them in spreadsheets today. Power BI, Power Apps gives us the ability to create a pretty robust solution, and it's complicated enough where our services are still needed, so anybody can, create a spreadsheet. But these applications require a bit of training. It's hard to keep up with them. So you have to commit to the time it takes to stay current with the platform. And, Microsoft's who we chose to stick with.
Yeah, I was going to ask, because the common thread across Power BI and business process optimization basically is, you need something more than network management skills, basically, to be able to do those kinds of things. So, have you had to hire people who specialize in some of these fields, or just invest in training? How did you get the skills in-house you need to do that kind of stuff?
We're doing both. We partnered with a group of contractors that essentially, positions themselves as selling services to service providers only. So they don't sell direct. They don't have a sales and marketing solution. They are simply the worker bees, and then they've got a project manager that manages them. In conjunction with doing that, we found some smaller providers and made some very minor acquisitions to get some of that talent where they were working on their own, but yet they weren't able to generate enough business to grow. And we spent quite a bit in marketing and sales to develop a pretty decent pipeline. And so a lot of the leads that come in are they're coming in not on the MSP side, they're coming in on the business application side, and we're taking advantage of that.
Yeah, really interesting. So is that the faster growing or even more lucrative already part of your business?
Oh, no, not yet. I think, that we've been doing this now, really focusing on business solutions for about 1.5 years. I think it's probably a 3-year commitment to really get that pipeline moving. These are long-term sales. If you haven't started, it's just like marketing. If you haven't started already, you're way late to the game. You should have a marketing drip system going on, with all the different solutions and messaging that you want to position yourself as. I find it more important today to look outward more, 3, 4, 5 years more so than I ever did in the past.
Yeah, well, and the way you position that kind of makes me want to ask. So it's maybe too late in the day already to be getting into some of the stuff you're doing now. What do you have your eyes on for what's coming up in the next 2 to 3 years that you're going to need to invest in?
Well, there's a lot of buzzwords out there. There's IoT and AI, and I don't even know what our play is there yet. We're looking at different things, that would enhance our skill set. Obviously, they're going to be game changers for certain industries. Some of the industries we spend, a lot of vertical time in, like insurance, manufacturing. I think there'll probably be a play for more IoT as time goes on and managing devices, because that we're seeing that already. But on professional services, things like that, I don't know what kind of AI is going to happen there. Unless it's it has something to do with their sales department or something along those lines.
Well, it seems like you have a pretty good start in leveraging something in AI, because data visualization is kind of a big part of that. Is getting amassing all of this data from these devices and then being able to do something with it. It sounds like you have some experience there, so that might be a good fit for you.
It could be. When the opportunities come up, we're taking them as they come, and depending on what line of business they're in, we certainly have our ears open. We spend a lot of time in industry with industry events, and people have a lot smarter than I am, and I do listen to them. There's a lot of jabber out there, obviously, and it's hard. It's really hard for a small service provider to pick and choose. Well, what are you going to do next year or the year after that, or are you just going to do what you're doing today?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about placing bets. They can be expensive bets, but it's all about placing bets and just deciding, is this worth investing in? Does this latest buzzword actually have some legs to it?
Yeah, no doubt. And I see us transforming more into a sales and marketing operation, much more so than a tech firm.
That's interesting. So basically get the solutions to be as cookie cutter as possible and focus your attention on landing as many customers as possible.
Well, there's combination. We're constantly getting pressured for, are we adding seats? Are we adding cloud spend? That's a regular thing. So yeah, we do have to add seats for growth, and adding those seats allows us to, cross-sell, upsell, and have the finger on that client, regardless of whether there's another provider and they're selling, other solutions that we would provide as well. It gives us a little bit of a leg up. But hard to say in the long term. When I say sales and marketing, the marketing thing I think is just a necessity to keep a pipeline full, so you're having new conversations and conversations with existing prospects and leads, no matter where they're at in that sales cycle.
Right. So people who are listening to this podcast in audio can't actually see you, but you got to tell us a little bit about this RV, because your RV looks nicer than my condo.
Well, yeah, well, thanks for that. And face for radio, like I said earlier. Anyway, so you're not missing anything if you can't see me. But yeah, this is an interesting change in life. I still have the place in downtown Dallas, and I'll move back and forth. But I bought a 44-foot fifth wheel and a new truck to pull it. I was going to go down the Keys for a few months and work from there. So and that's the other thing. Our team is unbelievably virtual. We have offices, but rarely does anybody go there.
So you got a fifth wheel, not necessarily an RV.
Yeah, well, it's a fifth wheel, yeah.
It's a fifth wheel. It's a trailer. Okay, cool. Well, some of those fifth wheel trailers are nicer than my house.
Yeah, 2 bathrooms, full-size fridge, generator. It's got pretty much everything.
What are you pulling it with?
I got a Ford F-350, a diesel. Just bought it, long bed. So it's a beast.
That'll do the job. You could pull quite a big trailer with that.
Yeah, I hope I don't have to convince the IRS, why that's needed for an IT, some company, especially doing cloud. That's right.
All right. Well, it's great to have you here, and it's a very interesting story and outlook that you have there. And hopefully, as the show goes on here and we talk about some of these other things, you'll be able to chime in here with some interesting thoughts, advice, and your take on some of these stories and things that we're going to talk about.
All right.
All right. So, Rich, it's been a fairly busy news week. You've been on the road this week, right?
Well, I was on the road this week. Yeah, not at a conference actually. I was down in Austin, Texas, doing some things with the good folks from SolarWinds. But it's been a relatively busy news week. Not a ton going on, but some hardware news we'll be talking about coming up.
Yep. We got a little bit of that coming up, and we got some other interesting stories that we're going to talk about probably after our. I don't know if we'll do one break or two, but we'll get to some other interesting stories that we're going to talk about, including your tech preview and some managed services bundles kind of stuff. So why don't we dive into the news and talk about what's now and what's next for Kaseya?
Indeed, yeah. So the folks at Kaseya reached out to me, I guess it was last week at some point, and said that they were going to be making an announcement this week, which I sort of think of as, this bucket of announcements as momentum announcements. Sometimes you'll see a press release from a vendor just, saying, hey, we're growing like gangbusters and we just finished up a great year. And to be totally honest, I tend to shy away from the momentum stories because it's very exciting for the vendor, but I don't know how relevant it really is to our readers. But in this case, they offered me some interview time with Fred Vacola, the CEO of Kaseya, and I accepted the offer because pretty much any time I talk to him, I'm going to learn something new and interesting. And he's been very forthcoming about discussing future plans and so on. So that's mostly what my article wound up being about. And so I guess a few things to talk about there. So in 2018, Kaseya was buying up companies left and right. It was a huge year for acquisitions over there. And that began with Unitrends, the appliance-based backup disaster recovery vendor. In September, they bought Rapid Fire Tools to add some security and especially compliance functionality to their platform. Just a few weeks later, they bought Spanning, which is a cloud-to-cloud backup company. And then the big one, that was announced in December is that they have acquired IT Glue, the managed services documentation vendor, and that acquisition actually was sort of secretly in the works for 2 years, but it completed. It closed essentially at the end of last year. So acquisitions obviously were something I asked Fred about when I was interviewing him a few days back, and they're not done. He's obviously not going to get too specific about what's to come, but he said there are at least 3 more acquisitions that are coming in 2019 that are in the works. And they're going to fall within the same kinds of buckets as last year's acquisitions. There's going to be something security and compliance related in there, maybe more than one. He said there will be something that's in the vein of line of business software for MSPs, sort of like IT Glue. And then what was the other one there? Cloud management. There's some sort of a cloud management buy coming along. And Kaseya a few years back bought a company called Enigma that does cloud management. That they've got an acquisition along that line coming. And this all kind of ties into the big story at Kaseya, which is that they are trying to turn their platform, which they call the IT Complete platform, into a genuinely complete platform that has functionality deeply integrated, embedded within the RMM and PA system for more or less anything that an MSP needs to do or wants to sell. So they're looking for ways to add services, add capabilities through acquisitions. So I'll pause there. But that's one of the things that we know is coming up for Kaseya in 2019 is more acquisitions.
They certainly have it on a buying spree as of late. Erica, do you use any of the tools that Kaseya has been picking up lately, or?
Yeah, they've been picking off all my vendors one by one over the course of the last couple of years. It's very frustrating because, I was not really a Kaseya fan when we used the product. I know the organization's changed dramatically, as they all have. So I guess it's less of a stigma. The initial shock or the reaction, especially on some of the private boards up in Facebook and LinkedIn, was not a positive one.
Now, are you thinking about any of the companies I just named, like Rapid Fire Tools or Unitrends or Spanning?
Yeah, your Rapid Fire, IT Glue. I just hung out with one of the Unitrends guys the other day in Dallas. And we talked about that a little bit with him as well.
So every time I covered one of those acquisitions, Kaseya made a point of emphasizing these companies are going to continue to do business exactly the way they did before, as subsidiaries essentially of Kaseya, but they'll operate under the same leadership, same brand. If you're a ConnectWise guy instead of Kaseya, you're not going to be at a disadvantage. They will tell you there are serious advantages to using those tools. with the Kaseya RMM and PSA, but they're not going to do anything to sort of hobble you. So, I mean, you are in a position basically to either verify that, yeah, so far that's true, or say, well, no, actually some things have changed since the acquisition. What have you seen?
So far, nothing's changed. They have held true to that, and obviously with Autotask and Datto and the VC group there, since we're so aligned with Autotask, we've not seen any real big changes from that front either. What's frustrating is that, especially from a service provider's perspective, is we had to buy all those tools to bridge all the things that they should have built into their software to begin with.
Right.
There they are. Why don't you guys just build it or acquire them and give it to us for the same price? Because it should be there already. I've been playing the RMM game on the come for the last 20 years or 15 years, where they're promising solutions and not delivering. They're ready to raise rates and sell you new services as they come out. So a little frustrating from our perspective.
Well, I'll say, this IT complete expansion strategy on Kaseya's part is maybe one way to position it would be rectifying what you were just talking about there. Because with the to take rapid fire tools, for example, they are now Kaseya owns the Rapid Fire Tools product family, and they're selling those products. But they also took Audit Guru, one of the Rapid Fire Tools products, and created something new that they call Kaseya Compliance Manager based on that. And they did embed that within the RMM. So that it's not, an add-on. It's now a feature that comes with the RMM system. So that's just one example of this vision that they're kind of pursuing, where every time they buy one of these companies, Unitrend, Spanning, whoever, IT Glue, you'll have the option of continuing to buy and operate these things independently, but you'll also have the option of buying Kaseya's RMM tool and just getting it as within that tool, within the same interface, essentially woven into the same code base.
Well, I think that would be great. I mean, a single pane of glass and access all these different parts of an MSP's business would be great. But I'm 54. I don't know if I have that much time left.
Yeah. Yep. The old single pane of glass. We do hear about that a lot, don't we?
We joke about the single pane of glass and how many single panes of glass we all.
It's more like jealousy Windows.
Yep.
So, Rich, it also seems like there may be an IPO coming down the road for Kaseya.
Yeah. So, like you said, they're on an acquisition streak, spending a lot of money on companies and building out tools and solutions. This has the main reason they can do this, Fred Vacol will tell you, is because the business is growing very quickly. It generates a lot of cash, but it probably doesn't hurt that in 2013 they were acquired by Insight Venture Partners, which is a private equity firm that I don't know if they own the entire company outright or just a controlling stake in the company. But that's 6 years ago, and in private equity land, that's a long time actually to hold on to an asset. And so I asked about the possibility of an IPO. Now, just as an aside, like we all know, right, that is a stupid question to ask. Like, who is actually going to answer that question? And yet I am paid to ask the stupid questions. So I went ahead and did that. And as I did it, I was thinking back to an interview I did with Austin McCord, who was the CEO of Datto at the time. This is probably coming up on 2 years or so ago. And I asked, hey, is there an IPO in your future? And he said, that's like asking Hillary Clinton if she's running for president again. Even if she is, she's not going to tell you. It's like, why are you asking me that? There's no way you're going to get an answer. But I went ahead and I asked, and he didn't give me a direct answer, but by golly, he came close. And it's like you could tell he wanted to answer directly, but knew he couldn't. I will give you the exact quote of what he said, and it's in my article too. He said, I think we'll be a public company. In the relative near term, we'll be a public company. There's an IPO coming, and it's coming in the relative near term, and we'll just have to see exactly what that, the definition of relative near term is.
Yeah, but 30 minutes after that, he was packing his desk up.
Right.
So stay tuned, I guess, and it's like he launched into this whole thing about how this will be an IPO that will attract some interest. This is the kind of IPO that investors like, because he says the company actually, the company's growth rate increases as the company gets bigger. It was this whole analysis that he launched into, and I mean, clearly he's been thinking about this for a long time, and a lot of other people at Insight have as well. So it will be interesting to see when that happens. But I got to believe relative near term means sometime this year.
Yeah, it sounds like that may go down that path. But I wouldn't be surprised, and I think we've talked about this a little bit before, that we're seeing a lot of these VC companies buying into managed service providers and these companies that do generate a ton of cash, and holding on to them for a long time because they end up taking that cash and using it to buy other ventures. So I could see how some companies, some of these VCs might just want to own these companies just long term, just use them as a big piggy bank. What do you think?
Well, yeah, actually, I mean, interesting aside about that is I can't remember the exact phrasing I used when I got to this part of the interview, but the phrase change of ownership was in there, that, is there a change of ownership kind of coming up? And he said, well, change of ownership, no. And then he kind of got into the IPO thing. But his point basically was, even if we do an IPO, Insight isn't going away. The people who are running the company and the people I'm working with, they're still going to be around. So I think what he was getting at basically is they're not going to dump their entire stake of the company if the company does go public. They just become a very, very important shareholder in a publicly listed company. So to your point, that could be Insight's strategy in this case, and you might see other private equity firms kind of doing the same thing.
It seems like more of an exit strategy because the finance side of it gets a lot more complicated when you're just a shareholder, even a large shareholder in a company. It seems like it would be an exit strategy at that point. Let's rather than use the company as a piggy bank and just take all the cash and buy other things. Let's put the company public, increase the share value, and then sell outright and take the cash and run. Is how I would see that happening.
Or maybe the idea is to execute that process gradually, and this is why.
I'm not saying it has to be on the same day, but I mean, I think if you're going to if you're a VC company holding onto this other company and you're going to take it public, it seems more like you're interested in exiting and getting your cash out of it at that point.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Exactly. And that's overwhelmingly what these companies do. Buy the asset, turn it into something more valuable, spin it off, and move on. Take that money and move on.
Move on, Eric. You're gonna buy into the Kaseya IPO?
I don't think so. It takes too much time just to run. I've got a couple businesses, but to run the businesses I have, let alone looking at stocks every day. So it's just ETFs and mutual funds for me, buddy.
Nothing wrong with that. And Rich can't buy into the IPO because that would be a conflict of interest.
That's right.
Yep. No Vacola IPOs for you.
And no, I'm just going to have to watch everybody else make that move and see if it pays off for them.
I know it's painful to watch everybody else make money, other than me and you, the lowly reporters. All right. Anything else on Kaseya you want to talk about? I know there's a couple other bullet points here.
Yeah, real quick, I'll just touch on something that was kind of interesting. So last September, I went to the Continuum partner event, and Michael George, the CEO, went into his analysis of the market and where it's going. And the gist of it was, I'm oversimplifying, but the gist of it was that, in the major metropolitan markets, and especially the key verticals in those markets, you're going to see overwhelming percentages of the managed services business go to very large players, like 10 million plus a year kinds of companies. And then everybody else is going to have to get more specialized. They're either going to have to be outside the major metropolitan markets or kind of look for niches, essentially, where they can do something that isn't easy for other people to replicate. And talking with Fred Vokola of Kaseya, he just kind of brought up at one point that that's exactly what they're seeing. And he didn't reference Continuum or anything like that. He was just talking to me about what they're seeing in the managed services world. But he said the two big trends that they're tracking right now are the emergence of bigger MSPs through merger and acquisition activity, and the emergence of these much, much smaller but very specialized MSPs. And he referenced a Kaseya partner in Long Island, New York, that does absolutely nothing but compliance management for medical practices in Long Island, New York. Very, very targeted.
In the world.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I'd be the most interesting man in the world. The guy who does nothing but compliance
for doctors in Long Island. Yeah,
doctors in Long Island. Holy cow! He's
got 100 clients and he's making a lot of money at it. So I mean, that kind of business model can work.
Surprising they can get the small practices to spend the money, because they I'm sure we're drug kicking and screaming,
Well, it is Long Island, so who knows how small those really are.
That's true.
So, all right, sorry, Rich, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. That was I was just pointing out. Basically, it was interesting to hear Kaseya, without any sort of knowledge of what Continuum was talking about, essentially verify that that the exact same pattern. And provide some concrete evidence that because when Michael George was talking about it last fall, he was saying this is what's going to happen over the next 3 to 5 years, and I'm sure Continuum is seeing it happen already, and Kaseya obviously is too.
Very cool. All right. Well, it's a good interview. There's a couple other things in there, so we'll put a link into the show notes and also into the YouTube live stream chat here, which I probably should have done when we started talking about this. But we're gonna move on. So Acer's in the news. They got some new Chromebooks. Now this could lead into a very, very interesting discussion, especially since we have an Office 365 guy here hosting with us. So Rich, tell us about these new Chromebooks.
Well, we were talking about whether or not this was a busy news week. And really the biggest sort of overarching news story this week has been a education technology conference in the UK. It's called the BETT conference, BETT. Takes place every year around now, and it's traditionally every year it's a launching pad for all sorts of laptops and notebooks and virtual reality systems. Anyone who plays in education technology has something or other to announce at BETT, and Lenovo did, Dell did, just for purposes of the podcast here, and pulling something off for a website. Here are some products from Acer that they debuted at BETT this year, and it includes their first two 12-inch Chromebooks. Chromebooks are not, I don't know what the market share figure for Chromebooks is at this point, but they're not a huge presence in the hardware world, but they're a pretty big presence in the education world. Just one small illustration of that is Acer expanding its already reasonably large family of education Chromebooks. These two products, there's one that's sort of a standard clamshell kind of laptop, another that has a spinning display panel on. It's a little bit like the Lenovo Yoga. And then they also had another somewhat more conventional education-oriented laptop, but it's got some powerful processors in there, and they have it sort of optimized for multimedia kinds of deployments. Interesting products worth kind of checking out. And to your point, it's just interesting to see the growth of the Chromebook form factor, essentially, the importance of that in the education space. I remember almost a year ago at this point interviewing an executive from Synex who really strongly believes, and Synex strongly believes, that you're going to see more and more of that, not less of it, going forward. And what he said basically is just, if you don't believe me, just look at the kinds of technologies your kids are using, because they're all on Google and they're all on Chromebooks, and they're the technology buyers of tomorrow. So that's
exactly what I was just going to say. I look around and I see every kid carrying a Chromebook these days. And as someone who generally I'm more of an Office person. I'm not going to lie. I like Office. I like the power and flexibility. It seems like there's this weird disconnect. And Eric will be able to confirm this. When people talk about like Excel, they don't realize, or they can't fathom or comprehend that you can make an edit in an Excel spreadsheet in a web browser just like you can with Google. Eric, did you know that you can do this? That you can they offer it for free?
I'm Googling it right now. Yeah, I happen to be aware of that. But we're dealing still. We deal with a lot of millennials as clients that are decision makers in a lot of the organizations we support. There are obviously some older people, and then there's some dinosaurs around. They still seem to want to gravitate towards the desktop app. They're willing to pay for it, which is surprising to me. I would have thought that they'd be gravitating towards trying to get their users to standardize just because of cost on web-based applications. But I don't see too many people doing that. I also don't see Chromebooks in our client base. We don't do any education, so we're not seeing a demand for those. But to your point, everything's going to change. Obviously, when this new generation starts infiltrating the workforce and pissing the millennials off,
they have no interest in learning Office or even trying. I give a personal anecdote. My daughter came and they were making presentations, and they had to make a presentation, and the school uses Google Apps. Then they made it in Google, whatever the Google PowerPoint is, I can't remember. And then there were some kids who wanted to use PowerPoint because they had to have it at home or whatever, and the teacher had no idea that you can, anybody for free can use Office Online. But
since Google's listening to all your conversations at home, they could just not build the damn thing for you.
Right, exactly. That's the next part for sure. But
let's be ready when you get home.
Yeah, it's super interesting, the long-term play, and I think Google targeting education was probably one of the smarter things that they did with this hardware ploy, because it's paying off a little bit now. But it's going to massively change the game in 10 years if these kids are out there.
And it's a world of apps, and it's just going to continue evolving into apps, and the apps will talk to each other, and you'll be able to plug data in from one source and have it show up in the other. It's already there. So
yeah, it is. Get your Google hats, your Noogle with the little propeller beanies coming. So Eric, are you going to start selling Google apps then?
No.
What happens if it changes, though? Because this is an interesting for a lot of guys like you who are, embedded kind of in the Office business solutions.
We'll clearly have to track those.
Yeah, right. But 10 years from down the road, that there may not be any demand for Microsoft Business Solutions anymore.
10 years. Let me do the math on that. I don't care.
Okay. But for those who do care, what do you say to them?
I'd say pay attention, just like you should have been on top of cloud. You certainly should have had a security play already thought of, and how you integrate that and present that and bundle that together. So I keep my eyes open.
Yeah, indeed. All right, so we get a little off track there, but Rich, about these particular Chromebooks in general, there's one thing that I noticed. These are the bulk of these things are usually low power, low grade hardware, but ruggedized designs. There's some ruggedized stuff in here to make them spill resistant, a little bit more resistant to kids. But I'm noticing a lot, especially on the Chrome side, they're really pushing 3.2 as the screen shape.
Yeah, well, and I mean, that's one of those sort of hardware nuances that I would look to you to kind of clarify to me, because you're right. They, especially with these devices, just in terms of the PR materials that they sent out to the media, that was way up high as one of the things that they emphasized, and they said that ratio. It comes close to the sort of paper and pen sort of experience that it translates nicely from that kind of familiar sort of textbook format. So I don't know how common 3.2 is outside of Chromebooks or education.
There's not many, although I do find 3.2 to be a nice balance between what the old 4:3 more square ratio and 16:9, which I find is really great when you really want to run two windows side by side. But when you're just focusing on one app, usually the widescreen format doesn't really do much to help the computing experience, in my opinion. Eric, what do you think about screen ratios? What's your preference?
Really, really large screens. 16 by 9, I think, was what I'm running here. I've got a couple 37-inch Dell curves, and plus I'm older, so I need to be able to see. So yeah,
but I mean, do you like your screen wider than tall, or tall?
I'll be honest with you, since we've got so many apps open at any given time, whether it be Chrome or whether it be actual apps that we're running Teams, and I'm looking behind the laptop here, and I've got a ton of stuff going in at a given time. Managing that desktop space is difficult, but no, I think I prefer slightly taller and wider. Slightly taller
than wider. Yeah. So 3:2 might even be the ratio that kind of takes over as we move forward, because it is a nice balance. I just know, like, looking at a lot of websites on desktops, right? Like, you open up your web browser, you go full screen, and like your website is like in this strip with all this empty space off to the side, and that seems like kind of like a waste, especially with how we utilize different utilize information. And since we're so web heavy, most websites aren't designed to fill the screen that way, because then you pick up your phone and then the website's going this way. So it seems like going back to a more square would make sense. But there's also the media play too, and when you're gaming and when you're consuming video, widescreen certainly does seem to make more sense. But from a productivity perspective, I prefer a little bit more tall than wide. Yeah, I mean, even my screens here, they're 16:10, just because I like that little extra height. And there's not a lot of 3:2 like standalone monitors that I've seen. But I also
spend all day resizing windows anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm with you, Eric. I think the trend of these giant 37, 43-inch mega curved monitors. Give me 3 of those bad boys wrapped around my head. That's what I want. Yeah. All right. Anything else to talk about these particular Chromebooks? I know you said they have a little bit higher end one, which I guess if you're in high school or doing more interesting things, it's what PCI, NVMe, SSD. They didn't talk about what processors in this thing, though. Are they only Celerons, or did they have a little higher end one?
I think if you go, let me see if that's the third or the second page. This was a marathon article.
AMD A6.
Okay.
Paired with our Radeon R5. That's not bad. That's not bad for a Chromebook. 3D graphics in a Chromebook is interesting though, but I guess there's games and stuff in the store, in their little store, that probably utilizes it. So all right, cool. But more Chromebooks. Check those out. Next, Epson. We've been talking a lot about Epson lately, Rich.
They have a lot of different hardware product lines, and so I hear from them on a regular basis. It's like, well, okay, we've got some new printers for you. We've got some new scanners for you. This week it was scanners, and in particular, they introduced 2 color workgroup scanners, commercial color workgroup scanners. Significant that from their perspective, the significant thing is that one of these 2 devices can process up to 85 pages per minute. And that sort of crosses a threshold for them. So some of the companies that they're competing with as they work their way into the color workgroup commercial scanner kind of space are at 80 or above 80 pages per minute. Epson didn't have anything in that range before. So this new product is the fastest device of that kind for commercial workgroups that they've developed, and puts them in the same ballgame basically as some of these other big names out there. Now, I gotta say, I researched this story. I interviewed some folks over there about these products. I wrote the story. I posted the story. It honestly wasn't until this morning that I started thinking about that number, 85 pages per minute. Now, maybe it's what I do for a living, or the fact that when I'm home, I work out of a home. Like, who needs to scan 85 pages in a minute? Maybe if you're a law firm and you're digitizing a big stack of paper, but my goodness, that's a lot of scanning power.
It is a lot of scanning power, and I've got a chance to review a few of these high power, high capacity scanners, including one of the predecessor models to this Epson one, and it was the DS8 something. I think, and I got to tell you, no matter who you are, when you grab a big stack of paper like this thick and you stick it into the hopper, and literally in like 90 seconds, it's just whoosh, 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 and you get these PDFs popping up on your screen. That's pretty cool, and I don't care who you are. That's neat to see.
Yeah, it's true. It's like even if you're not scanning 85 pages, if you're scanning 3 pages, watching them go at that, who doesn't want these things to happen faster?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, so there's two reasons why you want that, right? You have employees who need to be productive, right? So if you have a scanner that can scan 5 pages per minute, right? If they have 10 pages to scan, right, they're going to be sitting there watching their scanner work while doing nothing until it's done. Or you can get a scanner like this that can shoot through those 5 to 10 pages in 10 seconds flat, and they're off to the races. So there's a lot of reasons why you want speed, even if you don't necessarily need the capacity. But there are a lot of businesses, like you said, law firms. I have to imagine, medicine is still very, is definitely going more digital and being digital to start. But I have to imagine there's still a lot of paper and medical applications and medical doctors, and they might need to go through that very quickly. Eric, you work with a lot of different kinds of companies. I'm sure you see companies with lots of paper.
Yeah, still see a lot with paper, but we see that changing quite a bit, especially as we start to implement, business process automation, because paper and automation don't really go together very well. And what's amazing to me, I pretty much get everything sent electronically, yet I still end up with piles of paper, either here or in Dallas. And I buy nice fast scanners that just scanners, not MFPs typically. And, it's nice to be able to sit there in 2 minutes, go through, 50 pieces of paper, have it go into the app and have it end up in the whatever cloud repository, whether it be SharePoint or whatever, in a couple of seconds. Definitely love that part.
Yeah, and that's where the software side becomes real important too, because you want good OCR software to scan documents and make it searchable and that kind of thing. Yeah. And that's what's really funny is that's also with a lot of these different scanner lines. I always kind of see that's where I always find it to be the weakest is in the software side. I haven't played with Epson's package in a while, their Document Pro OCR, but it's funny because I always find that when I get these different scanners, the more enterprise-based scanners that are, $999 with $1,500 have worse software and like less options than the models that they sell that are more SMB driven, where you get stuff to scan business cards and you get little cool software applications that they provide, and like you get nothing with these other than like this basic scan app. And Eric, do you know why that is?
I don't know. I've been buying Fujitsu's, and they've got their little ScanSnap organizer, which can plug into third-party services, and I've been pleased with that. And, that was a $500-600 scanner, but we sell scanners in the $1,000-2,000 range on a pretty regular basis. There was a few years back, you had to go out to Nuance and buy something above and beyond. I think Xerox bundled it a few times, or at least a clunky version of it. But I think they're getting better. I haven't really evaluated every manufacturer's app, but I would look at that closely before I bought the particular brand.
Yeah. I've got a Fujitsu. I've taken a look at that one, the FI, one of their FI,
480 or something.
70, it's like a 70-some page per minute jobber. And their ScanSnap, it's a little different than the ones that they bundle in the SMB lines, is that it has less features, but more integration points. And I think
healthcare, they're going to be using something like eClinical, or they're just going to be bringing it right into their LOB app. So, maybe that's their
I think that's the game. It's like, oh, well, we don't need to package it because nobody needs it. And it's like, well, what about the guy who wants a really nice scanner for his small office just because he doesn't want to scan? He wants to scan 90 pages a minute, and then he has to he has no software, which is kind of
Stick in the middle of the product line then.
yeah. But then you don't get 85 pages a minute.
Okay, I think I do 70.
Well, yeah, it's fun, Rich. You got to get yourself one of these hyper fast scanners just to watch it.
Yeah, exactly. I need to go find some place where I can just watch it work, because I would actually kind of like to see a scanner work that quickly. Just by the by, the price points that you kind of tossed out there before are right on the mark for these two new scanners. So there are two, and we've been talking mostly about the one that does 85 pages a minute. There's another one that does 65 pages a minute. That one goes for the MSRP $999. The 85 page per minute one lists at $14.99.
That's not bad. That's about what I would expect for this range, especially the competition that they have in this price point. So very cool. So, Rich, do you want to take a short break, or do you want to plow through? Eric, do you need to go grab a sip of water or something?
Excuse me?
I think that means Eric is good. So why don't we just plow ahead, Mr. Rich?
Plow on.
Plow on. All right. So next up, speaking of plows, we're going to talk about snow removal. No, we're not going to talk about snow removal. Although I've got a lot of that up here in my neck of the woods, although I can't imagine you're dealing with much snow in Florida there, Eric.
No.
2019 Tech Preview, Surprise Edition. Rich, what's going on with our Tech Preview? Why is it a surprise?
Well, so every January in ChannelPro, the January issue always includes our year ahead preview story, and we're always looking for some sort of little twist to put on things, just to kind of mix it up a little bit. And so this year, I in interviewing the various experts I consulted about what to expect in different markets like managed services and digital signage and cloud computing, et cetera, I asked them for their predictions for the year ahead, and then I also asked them what happened in 2018 that surprised you didn't expect it to happen, or in a sense disappointed you. What did you think was going to happen last year, and it never actually came about? And so the story, our cover story for January, which is up on the website now, includes both the look ahead and the look back from these different experts who I consulted. And in terms of the look ahead, it was interesting to me. Now, artificial intelligence came up earlier on the podcast here, and AI and IoT are the two enormous emerging technologies, if you will, that all of the biggest names in IT are focused on right now. The Microsofts and IBMs and Salesforces and Googles care enormously about those two markets. But specifically with respect to AI, we're still at a stage where, we're kind of waiting to see how that really impacts the folks who read ChannelPro. And, we're beginning to see AI get built into products that people use and sell in interesting ways. But, is there sort of a market play around AI? In any event, a lot of the predictions that I got for 2019 in different markets, in one way or another, incorporated an element of artificial intelligence. Specifically in the Internet of Things, for example. I was talking with Benson Chan, who will be speaking, by the way, at our SMB Forum events this year about IoT. He's an analyst and consultant in the IoT world, and he was talking about how there's really this sort of arms race going on right now in the processor world, much of it involving companies we haven't heard of. It's not just the Intels of and NVIDIAs of the world who are playing around in IoT and AI-infused IoT processors. There are hundreds of startups that are developing specialized processors of various kinds. And he expects 2019 to be the first year that you really start to see some of that technology begin to do interesting things in terms of actual real-world solutions. So he was talking about the opportunity that might not happen exactly in 2019, but is coming soon for a smart city solution, for example, that a city government deploys to not just monitor, not just watch from a public safety standpoint, what's going on in this plaza or on that block, but to actually have the embedded intelligence within it to recognize certain patterns. So if it sees somebody getting assaulted, if it sees a street fight outside of a bar, if it sees someone going the wrong way on a one-way street, that the system can recognize what it's seeing and actually issue a real-time alert to the appropriate authority. You're going to see more and more of that kind of thing coming up beginning this year, he said. And, in digital signage, very different market, different consultant I spoke to, a gentleman named Alan Braun, who's my favorite digital signage analyst. He said similar kind of thing. You're going to start to see digital signage solutions with built-in artificial intelligence that are going to get better and better at recognizing specific things about you and tailoring signage and what the signage displays and when it displays it to who you are, some of your basic demographics, some of what you're doing in a store, what your traffic pattern inside a store. That's coming along in a big way in the next few years and starting this year.
Well, that's a scary thought.
Right? City government's got cameras all over the city, and they're watching everything and getting better and better at recognizing what you're doing and maybe telling people about it.
So it's kind of like our new future is.
Yes. For those of you watching the video.
Yeah, I got that advertising scene from Minority Report. Where he walks into the Gap and like all the digital signs, and all the digital signage that he walks past, and he goes into the store, like scan his eyeballs and recognize them, and like start talking to him and saying, "Oh, welcome back. I hope you liked the pants you bought last time, and we have your size shirt over here." And it's just really, really scary to think that that's our future.
Yeah, we don't want that.
It's what though. There's so much in Minority Report that has like come true already. I think that's exactly where we're going, right, Eric?
Thanks.
AI will do it.
It is interesting, every now and again, technology gets way out in front of what people are willing to put up with. I mean, there may come a day when that scenario from the movie and that you were just talking about feels perfectly natural to people, and it doesn't feel creepy, and they're okay with it, or even kind of happy to have that sort of automated advice. But for right now, it's like, even if you could do that, there are a lot of consumers who would not want that, and it might drive them out of the store, basically. It's funny. Data mining is the same way. I mean, businesses could get even smarter than they are now about anticipating your desires and so on, but it starts to get really creepy after a while, and it's almost like they have to kind of dial it back, the companies that use these technologies, to avoid offending or alienating anybody.
Imagine getting hold of that.
Oh, sorry, Eric?
Can you imagine politicians getting hold of that?
Well, there's that, but there's also a lot of privacy problems that I see with that kind of adaptive signage, right? Like we just talked about one where, of course it's a movie, but he walks into the Gap and they start talking about his interests, like right in public that everybody can see. And I fear that like I'm going to like walk into a grocery store or something like that, or a pharmacy, and there's going to be all these digital signs, and like there's going to be some very attractive women over there, and I'm going to be trying to show off, and I'm going to walk past the sign. It's going to say, "Oh, hello. How was that rash on your bottom that you bought that cream for last week? We have more of that cream. How also we hear we know you've been having problems with flatulence lately. Perhaps you could try this anti-gas thing." And like how are we gonna deal with the privacy aspects of some of that kind of stuff?
Well, I mean, again, it's like we're going to see situations where the technology can do things that people don't want it to do, and those capabilities just won't be taken advantage of. And that's a perfect example. Unless you can somehow deliver that message to somebody in a really private way, even if the system can do that, we'll probably never get to a point where it's actually doing that.
So, Eric, do you have any weird medical issues that you wouldn't want advertised on a billboard?
I don't know if they're weird. Yeah, I don't know that they need to be on a billboard or Facebook for that matter. I don't need pictures of somebody's nasty foot. Stuff I see posted there. I mean, we can't develop a plan for regulating that social media, let alone God forbid that we're doing face recognition, which they're already doing, incidentally. So,
the interesting case, it's like if it's medical information we're talking about, it's a pretty cut and dried kind of case that you don't broadcast. There's a law against broadcasting that in a public space, but it's all the smaller but still potentially embarrassing kind of things where it's like you were saying, Matt, you're at the grocery store, you pick up a bag of Oreos or something, and something says, "Again, didn't you buy a bag of Oreos yesterday?" Which is not, from a technology maker's point of view, maybe that doesn't feel like a huge privacy violation, but you don't necessarily want everybody to know about it in the store. Another 6-pack of Bud?
Oh, right. Okay. You're grabbing like the handle of a bottle of Jack, and your digital sign pops on. Matt, are you okay? Did something happen today?
That's bottle number 6 this week. You are eligible for a discount. Yeah.
I'm gonna fall out of my chair.
It flies in the face of the reality, because they're certainly going to want to continue to sell product. They don't want to talk you out of it. I mean, last time I moved out of a particular part of town, the liquor store closed shortly thereafter. So.
I don't know. There's some arguments that companies these days aren't always interested in selling products, but implementing social change.
Oh, this is true. Yeah.
So there has been some evidence recently on that. We don't talk about that kind of stuff on this show, but I see a lot more in your face. You are a bad person for buying blah coming to a digital sign near you. All right, let's leave Minority Report for a minute. What else do we got coming up in the world? We got managed print and changes in VoIP.
Yeah, well, and I'll talk just a little bit about print, and there's tons more in this article, and I encourage people to check it out. But the print bit was actually very relevant to some of what we've been talking about on this show, because according to Keith Kometz, who is one of the printer analysts at IDC and the expert I consulted on that topic. The big story in print for 2019 really isn't going to be printers. It's going to be print software and print services. That's where you're really going to start seeing the action, cloud-based sort of accompaniments to the print hardware. And he's talking print, not scanning. We were kind of talking about scanning software before, but that. Everybody is looking for recurring revenue, the kind of recurring revenue you can make with an as-a-service kind of offering, and less and less interested basically in anything that you sell one time and the customer is going to run for 3 to 5 years before they think about replacing it and so on. So the printer guys and presumably the scanner makers as well are all looking to software and services as important growth opportunities.
You do a lot with print, Eric?
Not. The core of our business is trying to get people away from printing, and going paperless. So, on top of that, these large organizations that sell MFPs, copiers, they're hard to compete with. They're constantly in these places. Selling print, and, then we end up supporting the device in the end anyways. So no, we do a little bit. We'll sell some desktop printers here and there. I have seen a shift in some of the small businesses where they're going back to individualized printers. So if there's opportunity there, if you want that.
Yeah, as opposed to the big office giganto printer.
I'd like to say we're working with companies that are trying to get away from that, and that's one of the solutions we're leading with. So I just haven't led with it.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. Anything else on Tech Preview, Rich, that we want to talk about? It's a long article, so we'll drop a link into the show notes So everybody can go there and check that out. But I see a couple things on like cloud and BDR. You want to touch on any of those?
Nothing I mean, interesting stuff. Nothing that screams, the cloud bit there's a lot about hybrid cloud there. Let me open that up real quick because there was something, if I remember right, that I thought worth flagging. We haven't talked at all, and probably shouldn't spend a whole bunch of time talking about the surprise aspect of this. I mean, Dave Seibert, who we tried to get on the show's guest host last week and had some technical issues. He'll be with us in our next episode. He was one of the experts I consulted for this piece, and he was surprised about how slowly blockchain has caught on. He really thought 2018 was going to be the breakout year for blockchain, and we were really going to start see it built into a lot of solutions, see business opportunities coming around it, and it not only wasn't 2018 a big year for blockchain, he doesn't expect 2019 to be any different. It just doesn't feel like all the developments that need to take place in order for that breakout to occur those pieces aren't coming in together, and it could be a while. He feels, before it does. And in terms of cloud management, I interviewed Judith Hurwitz, who's an analyst, and she was very early in a lot of ways to cloud computing, is still one of the people I most respect in that area. And she keeps waiting and was waiting last year for more and more and more and better cloud management capabilities to come out. And that was sort of, one of the things that she thought, finally, 2018 we'll start to see some better tools come, and didn't happen in the end.
Nope. It didn't. So that'll be an interesting conversation to have with Dave next week. I'd like to pick his brain on that a little bit.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that later. But now something to move on to something that's very near and dear, probably to Mr. Eric Long, and to many of you out there, is how to optimize managed services bundles.
Now, this is a story that appeared in the January issue of our magazine as well, and it was inspired by a comment from a previous guest host on this program. Folks will remember Vince Tinarello, who is an MSP in the Denver area. He's spoken at our live events. He has been a guest host on this podcast before. And I think, even now that I'm thinking about it, we actually discussed this issue with him when he was on the show, if I'm not mistaken. But he has been talking a lot, thinking a lot lately, has been frustrated a lot lately by the fact that, people like him, they go to conferences, they talk to vendors, vendors approach them at the office. Everybody's got some new, interesting product that they want you as an MSP to be selling to your customers. And eventually there are so many products out there that you can sell to your customers that you find yourself in the situation where you're either adding more and more stuff into your bundles and not raising the price on those bundles, in which case your margins are going down, or you're adding more and more stuff into your bundles and charging more for them and pricing yourself out of certain accounts because people aren't going to be willing to pay extra. And so it just feels from his standpoint like it's gotten more complicated, even more complicated, to sort of optimize just what do I need to put in into my bundles? How much is too much? How much is just enough? And how do you kind of deal with some of these marginal cases where some of my customers are going to want this particular new service, but not all of them. So maybe I offer that as a one-off line item that they can tack on to a bundle. But the more you do that, the more sort of one-off all your contracts become, and the harder it becomes to keep track of and manage SLAs and contract requirements and so on. So the whole idea of optimizing managed services bundles has never been easy, and it's gotten harder. And that's what this article is about, basically. It just includes some perspectives from a number of different MSPs about how they are attempting to tackle this issue. And as it happens, we have an MSP with us on the show. So do you run into this conundrum yourself at all, Eric?
Yeah, absolutely. And it depends on the type of client base that you have as to, what what you're going to be able to bundle in without having to go back and sell the client another service every time you add something in. We've taken the track, we've essentially created an all-in agreement that is just that, it's all in. So we don't go back and nickel and dime the customer. If we want to add new technology and that protects the customer, we're going to add it in. We just price the agreements high enough. And yes, we probably do lose a couple prospects because of that, but that's okay. We're looking for a particular profile as far as the customer goes. So, our all-in seat price gives us a lot of leverage to be able to put a lot of extra effort in a client on a monthly basis and add these services, things like, a desktop app to submit tickets, whether it be IT Glue, My Glue, all those enhancements. We do security as a service, but just by de facto standard, so each client's going to have an appliance there that's scanning the inside of the perimeter, and we're going to be producing the same reports if there are 5 users or if there are 500 users.
Now, one of the things the article talks about is trying to decide when you add a new service into a bundle for free and when you don't. And because one of the nuances there, one of the wrinkles there is that sometimes including, say, a new security service, and I think DNS filtering was an example that shows up in the article, sometimes you throw that into a bundle and you don't charge more for it. And so theoretically, you're paying for that license, but not making money on it. But at the same time, you're also preventing security problems at some of your clients. So you might be making that money back in terms of fewer tickets to resolve with that client. Do you have any thoughts about when you do or don't just sort of toss something into the bundle?
Like I say, I typically don't go back and line item the customer. I could see if it was a third-party solution. So, for instance, we do 2FA on all servers that we manage. We just bundle that in. That we don't charge the customer anything additional for it. However, if they want to roll it out, do 2FA out to every workstation that they have, and it's a fee-based service, then we would probably add that in as a separate line item. In cases where we're doing wireless as a service, obviously, if somebody order 20 more access points, their subscription is going to go up. So we create a master subscription and then add those services into that subscription.
And then is there a like a pricing change potentially once a year or something like that, or just the length of the contract, it doesn't change?
In length of contract, it wouldn't change. At renewal, we might look at that contract and raise it. We've not been really diligent about, looking at our service agreements when they come up for expiration and then just increasing it arbitrarily. Maybe we should be, but we're not.
Well, I would encourage folks. My guess is the vast majority of MSPs in our audience are dealing with some version of this issue now, just as Vince is and Eric is, and the other MSPs who were interviewed for this story. So I would say check it out on our website. You can kind of see what some of your peers are doing, how they're tackling. I don't think just spoiler alert, I don't think you're going to come away from the article with the master plan, like the formula that's going to work in every case for everybody. This is a pretty complicated kind of topic, but you'll get some perspectives on how experienced MSPs are trying to deal with it that could be useful in coming up with your own plan.
All right. Everybody's got to come up with a plan, right?
Plans are important.
It's going to depend on your customer base and your market. I'm sure all those things are going to come into play.
I'm very anti-plan. I think we should all just wing it going forward.
We would save a lot of planning time, wouldn't we? We'd have a lot more time for other things.
It's more efficient. It would inspire operational excellence by spending less planning time. No, in fact, that's not actually true. But you know what? You know something that can magically spur operational excellence.
Yeah, well, so another piece from our January issue. So we have a regular department within our magazine that we call Channel Wise, and we go out to various consultants and gurus who work with MSPs and VARs and pick their brain a little bit, get some of their expertise, and share that with our readers. And in January, we had a contribution from David Wilkeson, who is a former MSP himself and is now an MSP consultant to other managed service providers. And he had a really interesting story to tell about bonuses and his thinking about how you can use bonuses to really motivate top performance from your technicians. And so he talks about this system that he has used very successfully. He says the results at his business when he was running an MSP, the results for his clients can be magical. This is the word that he uses. And what he does basically is he comes up with a set of criteria, meaningful criteria in terms of what the business needs most from a technician. And then he creates a system basically that allows a technician to make, 80% of their base pay regardless of how well they perform against those different business criteria, but then enables them to make a significant amount over and above that. He calls it the 80-30 formula. So you're going to make 80% of your base pay one way or the other. If you meet certain thresholds, you can make 30%, like 110% essentially of what you would ordinarily make. And if you blow out your numbers, essentially, you can make even more than that. One of the things that he advises his clients to do, and he freely acknowledges that this is frightening, is set up a bonus structure with no upper limit, essentially. That the better you do, the more you get paid. And there's no cap on that, essentially. And I mean, basically, in his experience, as long as you're focusing on the right metrics, as long as you're incentivizing people to do the things that are really going to make an impact on your business, and as long as the rewards that people can make are meaningful to them, that like that's a sum of money that's really going to have an impact on them. If you set things up right, you can get significantly better performance out of your techs.
Interesting. So, Eric, what do you think? Do you think that's the right way to go about it? Do you think that works?
We just halt the floggings when they do well. So,
you're more about not beating people as much.
We ease off to the tad. Now, I've not thought about doing that with engineers. They're typically, getting paid quite a bit. Maybe, help desk personnel might be a little more enticed by that. The engineers are, they do have some compensation, some goals, but they're usually, as long as they're billable and productive, I don't really worry about it. We seem to have more success enticing, well, not really enticing, but team building, doing things like Top Golf and just events together, evenings, weekends, whatever. They're kind of like that, kind of kicking around, maybe, some type of a retreat at one point. A little difficult, though, when you're trying to staff and man a 7-day, 24-hour operation, to get people out. So you got to be a little creative.
Yeah, 3 different cities, too.
Right.
So less stick for you and no carrots.
Well, I guess we probably should put a carrot or two in there, but getting a little bit. We've got a pretty good team, and we don't micromanage. There, as long as the customer satisfaction is high, tickets are getting closed out on a reasonable basis. We don't really spend a lot of time analyzing what they're doing every minute of the day. So they have an independent. Very, very independent daily calendar. Just it's based on activity, traffic, and what projects we're working.
And I'm guessing you hire the kind of people who value that independence too. So you put them in an environment that suits their inclinations, and as long as they have the sort of trustworthiness and work ethic and so on to operate independently, then great, everybody wins. They're happy working that way, and you don't have to spend all your time looking over their shoulder.
Yeah, we've done a pretty good job with a very distributed workforce, even on the managed services side. I don't see any reason to stop doing it. I don't really honestly need 10 technicians sitting in the same room, kind of chatting with each other with a bunch of monitors on the wall with pretty pictures that nobody's ever going to see, really. So.
You got a thing against pretty pictures? What, I don't understand.
Little buzzing lights, and just, kind of like the helm in Star Trek, because nobody ever really pays any attention to it. Alarm kicks off, or ticket gets. We're ticket based.
Right.
If something happens, it's going to generate a ticket with a severity level that it's going to trigger an SLA that makes somebody look at it. We do have a dispatcher that continuously monitors those queues to make sure that things are getting resolved. But other than that, we're very spread out.
Just out of curiosity, I mean, do you manage those 3 offices as if it's one office, or are those 3 sort of quasi-independent businesses?
No, that's one office. And so it's kind of more of a national approach. Those just were markets that we had an existing foothold or we had personnel in. For instance, Tulsa, there's 2 people there, but they're key people. It's essentially, if they need a conference room, there's a conference room, but very small facilities. And I see that a good model moving forward for us. May not work for everybody, but we're already looking at it over in Houston right now. We've added up 4 or 5 new clients in Houston over the last year. No reason we can't expand that. So major markets typically for us, though.
It reminds me, as we're talking about this, I did a story last year or the year before in the wake of, one of you guys in Florida get hit by hurricanes on all too frequent a basis. But I did a story after one of those hurricanes in which I interviewed you and some other channel pros in Florida just about how they cope with that kind of situation. And you had an advantage that most of the other people in that article didn't, in that you had these offices somewhere else. There's like a redundancy element, essentially, to doing business that way, so that even if, in this case, a hurricane strikes the Florida facility, you've got offices in Dallas and Tulsa that can keep everybody up and running. And if there's a problem, a tornado in Tulsa, you're still going to have Dallas and Florida going. So it's kind of an interesting angle on things too.
It reduces expenses. I mean, overhead, like we say, as long as you get the right people that they can work in that environment, which you'll know pretty quickly. But I just see it as logical for us to continue proceeding that way because it's worked out so well. We're not tying ourselves to a particular market. We're not even tying ourselves to those particular markets. And so we expand, we'll add small locations in other areas where we think that we can get a decent foothold. And then just on top of that, most of the clients that we're having these discussions with, or prospects that we're having the discussion with, are multi-homed as well. They've got people spread out over multiple offices. So it's become a very common thing. And I'm seeing less apprehension of a prospect to do business with you just because you're in another town or state. Yeah.
It's so interesting the way, the cloud specifically, but just technology in general. I mean, that is how ChannelPro has done business since the beginning, right? I mean, we have a headquarters office in Raleigh, North Carolina, and there are 2 people who actually work there, and everybody else is someplace else in America. And it's just, eminently possible to run a website and produce a monthly magazine and run an event series in person, do all the things that we do with people scattered all over the place like that. If you've got the right tools, and they're not expensive these days, anyone can do business on that kind of a geographically dispersed kind of basis.
Even from a trailer park.
Yeah. Even from a 44-foot trailer. Rich, I changed my mind. I'm gonna sell a house, and I'm just gonna work from an RV like Eric.
Sounds kind of nice, doesn't it?
It does actually kind of sound nice. Like a little Class C, pull off to the side of the road. I'll be like, hey, look, I'm here at the largest ball of string, Yeah,
there's a little learning curve because you do need internet. So you've got to plan just a little bit. But since I haven't really done too much road work yet, we'll see how that goes. And then I still have the place in downtown Dallas, so I can go back and get my city fix anytime I want.
I got to say, I was nervous when I invited Eric to come on the show, and he said, great, I'd love to do it. I'm going to be in my RV. I was thinking, video, audio, is this going to work? And he said, oh, no, don't worry. We've got broadband on the trailer park, and this connection's great.
Yeah, so far so good.
So far, so good. All right. Well, I think what we're going to do, we're going to put a short break in here for our video and audio listeners. We're going to be muted here for just a second, but when we come back, we're going to hit our end of the show regular round of features. I do got a museum pick for you. I got a tech pick, and Rich will look into his crystal ball and try to predict the future. It usually doesn't go well, but he does it, and it's something that we do here, just so we can make fun of him when he's wrong. So stick around for that. You won't want to miss it. We'll be right back. All right, we are back with part 2 of ChannelPro Weekly, where we're going to break down the show here, and we're going to have a museum pick and a tech pick. So, Eric, you're kind of new. Do you know? Probably don't know why we do a museum pick. So I'm going to tell you. We discovered a long time ago that I have a massive collection of old stuff. I call it a collection. My wife calls it a hoarding problem and a disease that I need professional help for. But I actually have a giant cabinet. We previewed it in episode 100, which was here. That's got all kinds of cool old mobile phones and technology spanning the ages. I also have in my basement a graveyard of old desktops and other things that Rich has seen, boxes of stuff. And Rich will even attest. I have stuff in those boxes I don't even know what's in there anymore. So anytime I go down there and I start digging around, it's like, oh, I didn't know I had one of these. And of course, my office is a complete disaster. But it's fun because we get to see what technology was, and we get to learn like how things were and reminisce a little bit, and then kind of compare it to the things we have today. So my museum and tech pick today are just for you. That's right, just for you, Eric, because you discovered that you didn't have a webcam earlier on the show, so you had to go grab a laptop. So I thought, you know what, we should take a look at webcams. So
good.
So my museum pick is the one. Hopefully we haven't done it on the show before, but I found one of the first webcams I ever bought for a notebook. Because back in the day, Eric, webcams were not built into laptops.
No, they weren't.
In fact, it wasn't until I want to say early 2000s that even like the low end ones started to get webcams, maybe even 2003, 2004. Most of the time you didn't have it, you had to buy one. And you might have bought something like this. This is it was like a webcam that Creative built specifically for notebooks. And it's kind of not focused right. And they had this little clip that you could pull out, and you clip it to the top of your notebook, and then this little camera here. It's a wide angle lens that you could aim around. So you could also put it on your notebook, and then you could aim it and point it at other people, just because it's fun when you're talking, I guess, to point it at other people. I don't know why you could do that, but it was a feature, and it was an important feature. This one did have a microphone, and so it was a fairly low resolution. I want to say this was like VGA resolution.
For some reason, that doesn't seem that old to me. I was expecting like a brownie camera looking kind of thing.
I do have older webcams, but this one is kind of, you're in a trailer, you're on the go. I figured you might want to look at a mobile-friendly webcam. Because guys, remember, back in the day, too, webcams were generally not this small and this compact. They were big ball honking things that you'd set on top of your CRT monitor. So it was kind of nice having one in a svelte package. So, Rich, did you ever carry one of these around? Did you ever do a lot of video conferencing back in the day?
I didn't. So I went straight to buying laptops that had the camera embedded. I don't think I ever had an external camera.
But you have one now, though, right?
Yeah. So, I bought one because I needed to do video podcasting.
Right, yeah, because you got to get better quality than usually what's built into the laptops. So, so anyway, that's kind of a museum pick, a fun look back at somebody really wants to get a hold of you, Rich.
Yep.
You're a popular man.
Gonna mute myself for just a moment here.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and do that? I'll talk about, I will mute you because you're not muting yourself. Don't worry about it. You take your time.
Take a call. You're all good.
So just wave when you want me to unmute you. Okay, I guess he wants to come back.
I'm good. I'm good.
He's good. He's back. All right. So yeah, that's my museum pick. Now, today you can get some really nice webcams, and I'm thinking, Rich, you also ran into this one situation where you went and you got some extra lighting, which is important when you're doing this kind of stuff. And one of the big areas where webcams are used now is in like game streaming, which is and of course there's lots of video conferencing going around in the world. Don't get me wrong, but a lot of these people like to watch other people play video games. It's really weird. I don't understand it. Eric, do you understand this trend of watching other people have fun?
I am way out of the loop when it comes to video games. I haven't played one in years. So at the end of the day, I'm ready to walk away from the computer for a while. I did buy a VR headset though.
Well, that's cool. That's cool. Well, there's a websites, Twitch and YouTube and all kinds of like devoted to like people streaming themselves playing games. And if you're going to do that, it's nice to have a compact camera with good lighting. So if you were going to go and say pick up a webcam to use, you might want to consider one like this. And let me put it on the screen here. My tech pick this week is going to be the Razer Kiyo, and it's not the highest resolution webcam in the world. It is an HD one, but it's got like this cool light ring that's also built into it. So that way, if you're in an area where you don't have the greatest lighting, at least you have some source of light with you because it's built into the webcam. So I thought that would be kind of a neat one to show off. And here the performance is good. And yeah, so that's the tech pick, the Razer Kiyo. Spotlight your stream, it says.
$96 on Amazon.
Yep. So certainly not the cheapest webcam, but it's nice that it's got the light built in, and it also has a bunch of other features, kind of designed for gamers and stuff. But for anybody who just needs a webcam that's got a light built into it, there you go. See, Rich, you could have bought that, and you wouldn't even need to buy the extra light.
Well, I wonder, because originally this light I'm using now is like 3x5 and seems to be doing a reasonable job. But the first light I bought was something that I thought it was probably about the same size. And I thought, I can take this out on the road with me and when I'm doing videos. But it just really didn't illuminate very much. It was too small to have. So I wonder if that light bar on that device really kind of casts some light, or if it just looks cool, because it does look cool.
It definitely does look cool. And you know what? Who cares if it doesn't work very well? It looks cool. And that's all that really matters. Yeah, so anyway, well, that's my museum pick and my tech pick. My museum pick, the Creative Laptop Webcam VF0070. And my tech pick, the Razer Kiyo Integrated Light Webcam, more designed for gamers, but good for anybody who needs a little bit of light with their cam. Rich, tell us, O seer of seers. Now, you tell us what happened, and you usually get that pretty good. You predict the past with stunning accuracy, but you predict the future with less than stunning accuracy.
Yeah, but I'm 1 for 2, I guess. So we'll take this. So in terms of the past, predicting the past, actually, what you want to do on Fridays, you want to come to ChannelProNetwork.com. That's our homepage, and check out the "In Case You Missed It" post, which goes up every Friday. It's written by our own James Gaskin. This week, he is going to be talking about some of that hardware that I alluded to before from the BET event, the Education Technology event in the UK this week. So you want to learn what Lenovo introduced this week, what Dell introduced this week. Check out In Case You Missed It. He's also got some information for you about new partner programs from Kaspersky and Information Builders. And then he will also have a little information for you about a Help Wanted ad that you might want to check out if you're into hot dogs and driving. And from my perspective, it's really exciting to have this as a bit of news in the story, because it gives us an excuse to just use the word Wienermobile a number of times. So check out In Case You Missed It this week. You can learn more there. And now looking ahead to next week. The first HTG peer groups, and I've got to stop calling them HTG peer groups now. They are IT Nation Evolve. The first IT Nation Evolve peer group meetings for 2019 take place, I believe, in Phoenix. The IT Expo event takes place in Florida. Our own Joel Zadespinner will be there. And the IoT Evolution Expo event happens in Orlando, if I'm not mistaken. Pretty big IoT event. So that's all coming up. Got a little bit of news coming for you as well. I can't tell you too much about it right now, but there are some stories percolating for next week as well.
All right, Rich. How can you mix driving and hot dogs? Now, I guess maybe if it's a plain hot dog, that's, or just like a little bit of ketchup, but here in the Chicago area, a hot dog is covered with onions and mustard and and sport peppers and all kinds of stuff, and it's really messy. So how can you make that happen?
Well, what if you're driving the hot dog?
What if you're in a driverless car?
Or there you go. Yeah.
Okay, so
the killer app. We just came up with the killer app for driverless cars.
The fact that you can now eat hot dogs. All right, Eric, top 10. You're on the road a lot now because you got a trailer, right? So we'll say not top 10. That'll take too long. Top 3 driving foods, go.
Oh, geez. We'd have to go with fried chicken. This one's a little difficult, but you can steer with your knees. That would be Chinese. And then, probably a hamburger.
The hamburger is a good one. I am going to avoid you on the road if you're trying to eat Chinese food.
Well, I drove a tractor trailer when I was younger, and I used to eat fried chicken and steer with my knees.
Man, I can imagine the greasy steering.
Yeah, swear to God.
Now, Rich, you're more of a city dweller, so you don't drive a lot. But what are your top 3 road foods?
Well, it definitely has to be. Well, yeah. Does coffee count? Because that's hands down number 1, basically. But it's got to be something that you can hang on. I don't trust myself to steer with my knees, and chopsticks are out of the question. So I'm looking for stuff that I can hold in one hand, like say a donut or a pastry or something like that. That would probably be up there. And then I'm going to say number 3 is burrito.
Burrito's a good one. Burrito is
I thought you would have let us
Taco Bell. And grab tacos down the road are kind of hard, but burritos work pretty good. Taco Bell also got those crunch wraps. Those are pretty good. You can hold those. I like the burger. Burger's good. Lots of good suggestions. So if you're looking for more suggestions on good road foods, tune in next week when we discuss top 3 foods for when you're flying a plane. All right. I think that's going to wrap it up. So if you want to subscribe to ChannelPro Weekly, you can subscribe here on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button. And, of course, you have to hit the bell because subscribing doesn't mean squat on YouTube anymore. You have to get notified. So hit the bell. And if you want the audio version of the podcast, we're on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, pretty much where podcasts are aggregated. So you can go to any of the show notes pages on the Channel website for links to those places. There's also, if you have a favorite podcast app that you need like an RSS feed, we got that available on the website for you as well. If you'd like to follow us on the social channels, we are ChannelPro Network on Facebook. We're at ChannelPro SMB on Twitter. Rich, what are you on the Twitters?
At Rich Free.
And I am at Matt Whitlock on Twitter. And I'll pause there and say I want to say thank you to Mr. Eric Long, president of TeraCloud, for joining us today on the show and giving us insights. I hope you had a good time. I did. It was enjoyable. And where can people learn a little bit more about you and your business and follow you on social channels? And all that stuff. All in the usual places. We're up at Twitter, TeraCloud Inc., and we are up on Facebook, and we are on LinkedIn, obviously, since Microsoft would get mad at me if I didn't use LinkedIn. And what's your website for your business? That's TeraCloud.us. TeraCloud.us. Sorry. One. Go and check that out. To our guy. Community located in Logan County, Kentucky. Okay, so Alexa is listening in. Amazon's always listening. Jeff Bezos, you can great deals on Amazon.com. Don't hurt us, Jeff Bezos.
Did that answer your
Alexa, stop.
The train wreck that is Channel. Good. Well, thank you so much again for joining us, and hopefully we'll have you back on in a future episode. But until then, join us next week when we'll finally have Dave Seibert on. We're going to gather with him the day before and make sure we get all the technical problems worked out. So that way we get him on, and we'll have lots of fun to talk about with Dave. Lots of fun stuff and more in episode 104. So make sure you subscribe. I'll see you then. Thank you.